You know, sometimes things just don't go as planned. For example, at the beginning of the year, Glock released the 6th generation in its lineage of iconic pistols, at which time I had pre-ordered one with the intent to release a review that would stay ahead of the tsunami of all the other reviews that were sure to come. But considering we're several months past that release date, clearly I'm late to the party. However, despite a slew of unforeseen circumstances that prevented me from releasing this video in a timely manner, I did still film a lot of good shooting footage during that time. So in true never say die spirit, I've decided to utilize that footage and completely reshoot the narration as to still provide a relevant and entertaining video and also not waste all the time and effort I spent filming it. So considering many of you are probably already familiar with the changes to the Gen 6, I'm not going to bore you with the same old new product rigmarole. So instead of feature highlights and first shot impressions, I'm going to use the footage I compiled months ago and merge it with my current thoughts months after having shot the Gen 6. Which, quite frankly, probably makes for a more concise review anyhow. After all, you know what they say. If life gives you lemons, completely reformat your video so you don't waste a bunch of good shooting footage. Or something like that. So join me as I put over 2,000 rounds through the Glock Gen 6 in varying weather conditions, gun configurations, and facial hair to determine whether or not the Glock Gen 6 is the Glock we've been waiting for. Oh, and it's probably worth mentioning, we'll be reviewing the Glock 45 model. Currently, they only have 3 models available in the Gen 6, the 19, the 17, and the 45, so I went right down the middle. Now let's kick things off with the first 1,000 rounds in completely stock configuration during a blizzard. And yes, even with the crappy polymer sights, unfortunately. You know we got to yeet one out to 100. Yee! So truth be told, before I filmed any of this, I already hit a shot at 350 yards using just the iron sights. All right, Glock Gen 6, bone stock out of the box, 350 yards, 14 degrees outside, polymer sights only. Let's go. So this is all actually happening after the fact. Just want to keep it real with you. Nevertheless, we're going to bang one out at 200 yards. Just pretend I did this in order. I legitimately can't feel my fingers. I cannot wait to put an optic on this thing. The iron sight life, not for me. Nah. In fact, you know the only thing I think the iron sights are good for? Hip shots. You know, I've never done a trick shot with iron sights, so let's change that. Ugh. So after the first 1,000 rounds in completely stock configuration, I can definitely say that the Gen 6 is the best of all generations so far. The grip texture is way better, the palm swell kills the grip gap of old generations, the thumb ledge is decent, and in true Glock fashion, it ran like an inmate fresh out of a prison break. Heck, the new trigger shoe is even nice. And I could be wrong, but it seemed like it made the trigger pull better overall, even though I know it's pretty much the same trigger. So that could just be me, but still, it's definitely an improvement over the razor blade of old. However, if I'm keeping it real, it's pretty much the same old Glock with a way better frame. So suffice to say, there were still a lot of improvements that I deemed necessary. So let's quickly go over where I feel the Gen 6 still missed the mark and what changes I made to get this pistol where it should have been to begin with. Real quick before we begin, for everyone out there and the folks at YouTube, as you see, we're all clear. No magazine, thus no chance of accidentally shooting myself in the if I happen to flag myself during this next segment. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So it probably goes without saying, as I'm sure we can all agree, the stock polymer sights that Glock puts on their pistols are absolute garbage. So I threw those in the trash where they belong and replaced them with these Ameriglow XL iron sights to help back up the Vortex Venom enclosed red dot that you see here. I also threw on an aftermarket optic plate by C&H Precision that you can't really see thanks to the low optic cut that comes on the Gen 6 slide, which is a great thing. What's not a great thing is the cheesy polymer optic plate that Glock gives you with the Gen 6. Not only is this optic plate metal, but it also has recoil lugs that are specific to the footprint, which is going to give you a much better lockup, much less chance of your optic flying off, and also there's a little fin in the back that helps cover up the gap that the polymer plate leaves. So not only does the aftermarket plate perform better, but it looks better aesthetically as well. Moving right along, I swapped out the slide stop / release for an extended version because I find the stock versions very hard to manipulate when you're doing quick drills. So this is a part that I swap out pretty much immediately on all of my Glocks, as well as the mag release. I always go with an extended metal version.
What did he say?
Yes, metal, because I do not subscribe to the theory that metal mag releases tear up your polymer Glock mags. I have Glock mags that are over 6 years old with thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds and reloads through them that work perfectly fine. Not to mention the polymer mag release is very spongy feeling, and it tends to stick to those polymer Glock mags, whereas the metal version drops them out like butter. Oh, and by the way, this is a super old Glock mag that has only had metal mag releases used on it, and guess what? It's in perfect condition. Next up on the hit list, while I was stoked to see that Glock finally upgraded their trigger shoe after 5 generations of the horrendous model we've been left with, the Gen 6 trigger shoe still leaves a little to be desired. Mostly because it's made of polymer, and I don't think any trigger shoe should be made of polymer. So I went with the Atom trigger shoe by the Gun Co. As you can see, this has plenty of real estate on the face of it and no bevel. And that was my other big gripe with the Gen 6 trigger shoe. While technically it's a flat face trigger, it still has that bevel shape to it and feel, which by comparison, anytime you have any bevel on your trigger shoe, that just gives potential for your finger to be able to roll. Whereas a true flat face trigger, you have that perfect marriage and a clean, consistent pull each time. So this is exactly what I'm looking for in a trigger shoe on a pistol. Made of metal and a true flat face. You know, I guess you could call it perfection. Take notes, Glock. I also added the Olight PLX weapon light, which isn't replacing anything, but I wanted to use a little bit of shameless promotion because I did a review on this and it turned out really good. So go check it out. Another change on the Gen 6 that could have been great, but Glock still dropped the ball on, is the guide rod and recoil spring. While they did go back to the single recoil spring, which is much stronger and lasts way longer than the dual spring version, they used a polymer guide rod, which, quite frankly, is unacceptable.
Unforgivable.
So I went with the NDZ heavyweight guide rod and spring, and if you haven't heard of these, go check them out, because these things are awesome, especially for the price. And last, but certainly not least in terms of cost, we have the Enhanced Magwell by SLR Rifle Works. And while I absolutely love the aesthetic of this, as well as the fact that it accepts pretty much every magazine extension, what I don't love is the cost. This bad boy runs at over $100, which, if you ask me, is highway robbery. But considering the fact that Glock decided to just barely flare out the magwell compared to previous generations, they achieved nothing in terms of performance, but they did succeed at ensuring that a majority of previous generation magwells are no longer compatible. So that leaves us either overpaying for what's available on the market now, or waiting out until the clone market comes in with some more affordable options. Clearly, I'm impatient. So yeah, in my opinion, the Gen 6 still requires quite a few modifications. But hey, at least we're getting some progress? Anyway, let's get on with the second half of the video, where I'll be firing another 1,000 rounds in my personal configuration, aka how this pistol should have been to begin with. I'm going to absolutely yeet this paint can as far as I can. And it almost came back.
This is not a paid promotion.
It's that moment none of us want to experience, but we should all be prepared for. That bump in the night. A call to action where accessing your means of protection as quickly as possible is of the utmost importance, which is exactly why you need a Smart Palm Safe by Zegis. That's right. Instead of pesky keys, combinations you can't ever remember, or fingerprints that tend to fail under stress, with a Smart Palm Safe by Zegis, you simply hover your hand over the device, and you're ready to go. Zegis' Smart Palm Safe is the world's first palm vein activated handgun safe. That's right. As opposed to fingerprint detection that can fail under stress, needing keys, or remembering codes, Zegis safes use internal vascular patterns that ensure instant access to your handgun, even in the most stressful of circumstances. Just simply hover your hand above the sensor, and within an instant, you're in, even at different angles. Never again will you have to worry about the perfect finger placement or inputting the right combination in a hurry just to get to your weapon. So enough with the cheesy lockboxes. It's time to step up your game. Don't have a key? Forgot your password? Doesn't matter. Wet hands? No problem. You can rely on the Smart Palm Safe no matter what the condition. But rapid access isn't the only thing you can rely on. Smart Palm Safes store your recognition data locally, not in an external cloud that can be hacked. On top of that, Smart Palm Safes offer a USB rechargeable battery, humidity and temperature reading, and also allow for standard key or passcode entry, just in case you forget to charge your safe for any reason, or want to entrust a loved one with an alternate access option. Quite honestly, this is the coolest pistol safe that I've ever seen. In fact, the only thing that could make it cooler is getting an additional discount by using my code to save even more on the world's first palm vein activated safe. See that golf ball right there? But where'd we hit it though? Not bad. So recently I saw one of everyone's favorite YouTubers do a cool little trick shot where he shot through a tape roll, and it kind of piqued my interest. I thought, I want to give that a shot. Now, unfortunately, the camera that he shot that trick shot with cost about 1/3 of my annual income. Clearly, that's way out of my budget. However, in true good old boy fashion, I came up with an alternative. I just taped paper to each side. So what I'm going to do is throw up the tape roll, let it spin in the air, and try to time it to where it's facing me flat before I shoot through it, and see if we can get through both sides. So I did a couple feeler tosses where I just threw it just to try to get a flat spin, which is an obstacle all on its own. However, in doing that, I did notice that I can kind of see when it turns and shows me the flat face. So I think this might be possible. Guess we're going to find out. All right, the sun's directly in my eyes, but we're still going to see if we can get it. Oh, dang. For first try, we got dang close. It went through the top. Didn't quite get out the other end, but I think we can get it. All right, so I sort of got her patched up, still blown out at the top, but we got plenty of surface space in the center, so let's try to zip one right through there. Throwing this thing and getting it to spin flat is the hardest part. Ooh, we got some contact there. Did we do it? Oh! Hell yeah. Almost center. I'll take it. So, for my final thoughts on the Gen 6 Glock. Well, it's definitely a Glock, and I certainly have to give it to them for sticking to their guns in all the ways we've come to expect from Glock after 4+ decades in the industry. Namely, the excessive use of polymer in places that should have been metal. From the trigger shoe to the guide rod to the optic plate to the terrible sights that aren't even co-witness in a time where everyone is running a red dot, Glock did not disappoint in disappointing when it comes to missing the mark on easy fixes. Nevertheless, shortcomings aside, I'm going to give Glock its due where it's due. The frame. Glock managed to give us a frame that more or less eliminates the need to have to send it off to a custom shop for stippling and a thumb ledge. Not to mention the palm swell. And for those reasons alone, I can firmly say that the Gen 6 is the best of any generation thus far. But I'm not letting Glock off the hook just because I'm a fan of their platform or because I was happier with this gen than their previous releases. That would simply be disingenuous. The fact that after over 44 years, we're still getting the same crappy sights, an overuse of polymer, and an outdated trigger system, which, might I add, could easily be replaced with the Glock Performance trigger, is quite frankly unacceptable. Especially when you consider how many companies are putting out pistols with better stock parts within the same price range. Now, I'm not saying that Glock's going to get left in the dust by any means, but what I am saying is I don't think the Gen 6 is enough to pull the plug on custom shops, aftermarket parts, or Glock clone products. It's just simply lacking too much for that even to be feasible at this point. So do I think the Glock Gen 6 is the Glock we've been waiting for? No, I certainly don't. But it is one step closer to the finish line, so who knows? Maybe by the Gen 7, we'll finally get the Glock we've been asking for. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you'd be so kind to like, subscribe, comment, share, and turn on notifications for future videos, that would be greatly appreciated. And as always, remember to count your blessings and stay vigilant. God bless you all.